Hello and welcome to another episode of Casual Friday, brought to you by FTX, specifically the app, maybe some other features coming soon that we'll talk about. Links available in the description below. Longtime supporters of the show, support them because they support us, and we'll be talking about them later on as well with some news. Maybe we'll throw some FUD that way. Don and I love to live dangerously in that regard, where we shield the sponsor and then dunk on the sponsor's acquisitions and business decisions in the same show. So if that sponsor disappears, at least you'll know why. There'll be no surprises as to that. But anyway, check them out. They're good to us, and hopefully we can be good to them. Don, how are you? What's new? What's going on? We'll talk about BTC, XRP, and all your other memes. But for the time being, any spicy life updates or what's on your mind on this fine morning?
I'm good. I'm currently finishing up my motorcycle license, so that's cool. But other than that, not that much, honestly. Just a lot of traveling.
It's a cool biker bro, holiday, digital nomad, crypto trader. Like, you need an Instagram account. When are you going to surrender and just do it, Don? Become a lifestyle influencer. Look, I've been reading your tweets, the trading tweets, the engagement there. I'm not going to lie, it's pretty mid, right? For like a 5-year account or whatever. Like, it's okay, but it keeps the lights on, so to speak, but it doesn't exactly enthrall anyone. So your duck pictures get like double or triple the engagement of your trading tweets, even if they're very, very accurate. So I think the market is signaling at this point that you need to become a lifestyle brand. You know, you've got the girlfriend who can sing on some model ting, then you've got the motorcycle license, traveling the world, digital nomad, crypto. Just it's time. It's time to set up the Instagram account. Partner with some mattress companies and energy drinks, and I don't need to spell out the rest, right?
Oh god, my skin is crawling. Oh no, but how about you? How's life?
Fine. Anyway, let's talk about the digital coins. Last week when we spoke, things, I mean, they didn't look too different. It seems like we were around the same prices, more or less. We've had the rates decision since then, which was in line with expectations, and the price action was, I guess, a little bit different. If we start with BTC USD, I mean, the high time frame overview is the same, right? The monthly is still like in an area of 20K, but the demand there is becoming less and less obvious. And that becomes only more pronounced when you look at it on lower time frames. Like on the weekly, depending on how you count, we're on the, third, fourth, fifth, infinite test of this sort of, and it's even sub 20K if we're being real, right? Like, the market would actually look slightly better if 20K was the support and it was getting bid up and the market was floating at about 21, 22. That, I know that sounds like an incremental difference, but at least it would look slightly better. In this case, a lot of the closes and a lot of the price action is actually taking place sub 20K and like poking at 18 and stuff like that, which is ugly. But the weekly is just like in a big consolidation at 20K pretty much. And I think, as we've discussed, like, the longer it spends just doing that, the more it looks like 6K in 2018, and the resolution to that was like minus 50% basically, the real halving. So I think it needs to either break down from this range and fail and get reclaimed in a really impressive way, or get out of this range and trade, I don't know, between like 30 and 25K or 35, 25, like a higher trading range. I think getting stuck at 20K, as we've discussed at length both here and in the newsletter, is a bit of a death sentence, not death sentence, whatever. So that's not great. And on the daily, I mean, that range low that we've discussed at length, and the sort of 18 to 22K range, however you want to slice it, it's like the fifth test, depending on how you count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe the sixth one now. It's getting to the point where a level's bad when you're struggling to count how many times the market's tested it, right? That's like things you don't want to see when buying support. It's when you lose count of how long the market has spent down there. It's getting a bit choppy and messy as well. You can tell in previous tests it was a lot cleaner in terms of kind of where the market stops dumping when it reaches support and where it reaches towards when it bounces. More recently, you've had like closers violating the level and just a bit more chop and churn around the structure more generally. I think your tweet before you became an XRP maximalist summed it up quite well, where you said, like, it could go up, it could chop, could go down. Like, at this point, with these levels so beaten up, the likelihood that you guess it correctly and the subsequent size of every single rotation you're trying to time, like, it's maybe not immediately worth it until the chart starts looking quite a bit different. What's your kind of gut telling you, at least on higher time frames, this 18, 20K support? What's on your mind at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what you said. The longer we spend here, the worse it gets. And I still stand behind the tweet that I made before. Bought a bunch of XRP, which was basically, it makes no sense to risk a lot. in these kind of circumstances, because I mean your guess is as good as mine, right? And this kind of support, it's been tested so many times that I don't want to make bets on it. The only reason why I took an XRP trade was because it was, to me anyway, very obvious that it would be going up. So I didn't feel like I'm risking too much by taking on that trade, even though everything else looked like garbage. But yeah, Bitcoin still looks kind of shit to me. Not gonna lie, no change on that front. It's still leaning on that weekly support, and it's doing that for like weeks at a time, now months actually. And I really don't like that too much. I think it can take a while, honestly. I don't know if you remember, but like a few weeks back on Weekly Open, I was like, I could see us range between like the weekly support that we've thrown out and that tiny weekly resistance at like
That would be so miserable. What, the midpoint cluster?
yeah, like at like 21
Oh
or
god.
20.5, that resistance on the
Yeah,
weekly.
I gotcha.
And then this the support with around like 18 to 19K. And I mean, I said that like 3 weeks ago, and we're still in that area and we're still consolidating. And I could see that continue for quite a while.
That's hideous.
It's hideous, yeah. And I'm expecting it to break down eventually at that point, honestly. But I'm giving it a little bit more time. So I'm not really bullish on Bitcoin. It's at support. I don't want to be bearish at support. It's not like this is like the 5th or 6th weekly test, but like you said, on the daily, it's been doing that. So that doesn't instill much confidence. So yeah, for me, it's kind of like an area where I really don't want to be bearish in, but kind of my gut feeling and everything else tells me that I should be. And whenever that is the case, it's just like, okay, we're at support. Everything is telling me it's bearish. I'm just going to stay out because I'm not going to short support, especially not like cycle support. I still think like 19 or 20K, like that area as a whole is where the last cycle topped. And that's going to be around for a while, right? So I could see us have price action there for a while.
Yeah, it's going to be resistance for 5 years in the bear market.
Possible.
Get out of here. No, I think that's very reasonable.
Yeah.
And it's no coincidence that we were literally turbo nuking. Like, look at this weekly chart. I think people forgot that we went down for like 11 weeks in a row or something, or like 15 weeks in a row, whatever it was. And it's no coincidence that the previous cycles levels for both BTC and ETH is where stuff started to kind of slow down and churn a little bit. So that's still important as ever. But yeah, I agree with you. Broad conclusions. 20K support. It's not doing much supporting. If it gets out of here, good. You can trade some of those levels. If you're rebuying it for the 7th, 8th, 9th time, at least risk less on each consecutive test, because it doesn't look like a macro bottomy thing unless you get some sort of failed breakdown or just a breakdown. So, if you're the one time, if you make like 2 or 3% or, even 5%, whatever, between 2 and 5% every time you long the level, the one time you're wrong, you'll be wrong by like 20%, So you kind of have to adjust for that, because if you get this range wrong and it moves against you, especially on the support breaking side, it will wipe out all your previous smaller long-term trades you're making at the level. And I think 6K was like the perfect analog for that. People were saying 6K is free money and like buying, 5.8 and selling 6.2 to 6.4, 6.8, whatever. And then the one time they did it and it went to like 3, you can imagine that all those wins, if not that entire account, got deleted. So you always have to bear that in mind. Like, how does the risk profile of this trade change the more I take it, right? And in this case, kind of longing the same support, generally the kind of risk profile of that trade gets worse because the bounces get smaller, the chances of a breakdown become higher, and that's not a good combo in general.
The one kind of like positive, and I mean it's not really like the biggest positive because it looks like shit right now, is the S&P being at monthly support. So like I bear target Bitcoin at weekly support, right? But you don't want to be bear targeting too much, because when you have the S&P at support, it's been historically really good for like crypto, at least in the last few months. And we're back on the monthly support on the S&P front, which
that's 3,700 to 3,760 for our audience, listening
exactly.
or whatever. That monthly block.
Yeah, and we've tested that before, so it's way less conviction than I had in it last time. I chilled it really, really hard the last time we hit it. We had a really nice bounce. This time, like, not as much of conviction. I'm just going to be not bearish into it, basically. And I think that's already quite a bit. And I hope that we're going to get a bounce, because I have like I have an XRP play that I want to make money on, but doesn't really have to.
You've been
honestly.
writing letters to the SEC being like, Chairman Gensler, please consider the following in your litigation against, Ripple or whatever, XRP Labs and so on.
Yeah, basically.
What do you think of this monthly though? Because I think when we discussed it previously, just for the sake of like consistency, we said that it's a very good kind of first test, best test, fresh level bounce for the S&P because it's like the only thing down here, and it did an amazing job by taking it into the 4,300 resistance. But if you look at the monthly candles that have taken it back to this monthly support, those look kind of hideous. That's a very scary move from pretty much the best low high level you're going to get into the same sort of single block of, if you can call it that, of support. How do you rate the odds of a second bounce and also the magnitude of a second bounce? Because I think the most bullish I can get, as in at least intuitively, is that it provides a secondary bounce, but nowhere near as much as the first one, and then it kind of eventually breaks down anyway, because that doesn't look like a macro bottomy support, and it doesn't look like a retest type of structure that I have a ton of confidence in, especially if you look at kind of what's below us and just the bigger picture, I guess, in terms of macro. But if we just look at purely technicals, it did its job really well the first time. Now you've got like a much uglier structure moving into it the second time, and it's also quite soon, right? At least for this time frame, It's quite soon. It's just like a couple candles later. What's your kind of bounce likelihood and magnitude assessment of this level? I mean, you clearly care enough to long some Ponzi's, but like, what's your assessment?
So my assessment is basically that, I mean, I don't think it's going to go much further than 4K, if even that. So I think in general on the S&P, I'm expecting like lower and lower bounces. I think there's a chance, there's a good chance that we bounce into like 3.8, 3.9, 4 if it's like super, super bullish. Anything beyond that, I don't expect. And then I think we're going to go right back to this monthly level. So I'm not expecting the entire market to turn around.
Right.
I just think like we're at support. Crypto is still at support as well. So maybe bounce it a little. My conviction is sky high. I was very, very convicted the first time. Like you said, just given that this is just 2 months after the first 2 months after the first bounce. So the short, there's like very, very little time between us actually testing it the first time and now the second time. Which makes me just like not expect too much. But I still think we're at support, so it can bounce. It's just a question of how high and how long that's going to last.
You're just like, just give me a crumb of visible bounce so I can sell these XRP bags to someone else and send this thing to Hades. Is what's going
basically
like what's going in through your mind, isn't it? But also I think part of the appeal is there's so many good levels below this single monthly cluster, right? Like you've got the pre-COVID breakdown highs, which would be kind of poetic to kind of wipe out a lot of that reclaim progress that was just frothy, SPAC, Bored Ape, zero rate, stimulus, accommodative policy, infinite money printer, type of stuff, which would be nice. Yeah. I say it would be nice. It would destroy the amount of wealth destruction and what the economy would look like would be terrible. It wouldn't be nice. But I guess as someone who likes charts, it would be nice because the levels are more tradable and sort of more straightforward. I think we discussed also if this monthly support breaks, your first port of call is the monthly cluster around the COVID highs, which is what 3,400 to 3,300 essentially. That's really where the strong money printer uptrend started, and a lot of weekly time frame stuff also aligns there. On the weekly, I think that's also an S&P time frame worth looking at, and then we'll jump back to ETH very quickly. One of the things that was generating signals for us as far as strength and weakness, and we wrote about it in Technical Roundup both as support and as resistance, is that weekly over-under level at 3,900, 3,905 specifically in this SPX feed via Oanda, and that's just picture perfect looking at it, right? Like it was amazing support. Like it was really good support. Gave you a bounce. It got engulfed, closed below it, and then this week gave you a perfect like zero heat retest before this move down. And again, this market is just trading. It can't be overstated, even though we say it every show. This market is trading so technically that's really worth taking seriously. Especially if you're getting lost in the macro news, or you feel like macro is too crowded, or you're following the wrong people and everyone's a doomer now, etc. I'd be willing to make a case that if you keep an eye on sort of risk indices weekly and monthly levels, at least when it comes to short to medium term trading, you won't be caught completely with your pants down, right? Because even in the downtrend we've had, the monthly levels and the weekly levels, etc., have given you enough time to kind of get in on bounces, sell resistances, and they've been pretty accurate. You know, we're not drawing huge boxes here. These are pretty well-defined areas, lines in the sand almost, that have been pretty reliable as far as generating market signals go. But yeah, weekly time frame on the S&P, it's in an area of monthly support that's being retested, but the weekly kind of broke down. And I think at best you get, as you mentioned, some sort of bounce from the monthly. But similar to BTC at 20K, at the moment, it doesn't look like a bottom-forming structure to me. Even just a monthly without any levels, you know, looking from the top, it's like the final green month, and then it's like red, red, green, red, 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 green from the mega level, red, red. You know what I mean? I know it's not very sophisticated analysis, but like if you want to get a sense of the trend, just look at these monthly closes and the direction the market's headed in. Still trading very technically, but also part of that trading technically means it's in a downtrend, right? And there's kind of been no good evidence of downtrend reversal yet. If anything, as we discussed, the push to 4,400 or thereabouts was the kind of macro lower high, it looks like, and it got very close and it got to very good levels for that. And then, you know, like it's a downtrend. You expect resistance to hold and support not to, as far as these things go. So yeah, I don't think we're really missing anything as far as the S&P goes. It's just, you know, respect the technicals because it's that type of market. And one level at a time, hopefully anyway, because then Don gets to sell his XRP.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about that?
The XRP trade?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can. Do we go over ETH first, or do we do XRP?
Oh, you're right. Let's touch on ETH. So ETH actually hit support, which is thank God. Thank God. So it's also down like what something like 30-40% from the merge, which is kind of not from the merge itself, but like from the rally that was merge catalyzed, I guess is one way of putting it. Because you'll recall for the longest time, literally for I think for months now, we've talked about this 1900, like sort of 2K level as resistance, that highest weekly candle close between 1800 and 1900. That basically pico-topped the market on the first rally, and it's kind of been sort of lights out since then, right? And the level of support that it's now reached is actually most visible on the daily time frame. Which is the daily range breakout, the sort of, you know, the retest level of that at around 1230, 1200s. And the bounce is nice so far. But if you measure from high to low, as far as, you know, the 2K overshoot into where the market is now, that's like a casual, you know, 38% decline just on market hitting resistance and to it hitting the next support. And, you know, since the merge, it's also down like something like 20-odd%, something like that, depending on exactly how you measure, maybe even more, 30% from the most recent lower high. Like that's rough, right? If you needed more evidence that this was a sort of sell the news event in the short term, I'm not sure what you could ask for. I think the price performance is enough. But I guess my question is, now that it's hitting some sort of support, and we also talked about this breakout at length, right? When it happened, we're like, oh, ETH is leading, alts are leading, there's the merge narrative, etc. Now that news is over. The macro stuff, as we talked about last week, still sucks, but at least ETH is at like a good daily support, right? While also in the context of S&P monthly support-ish, you know, in brackets, and BTC still around the same sort of 18, 19K handle. What do you think of this level? Because, I mean, the short-term bounce has played out, and I mean, like, very short-term bounce intraday from sort of 1200 to 1350-ish. But structurally on the daily time frame, do you think this range high holds and we just have a higher trading range, or is this thing fucked?
I think it's going to hold for at least a little bit. But I mean, in general, I'm looking at the weekly time frame, right? So that for me, they're supported like 1240.
Yeah, that
to
close
like that to like 1330. So that area is where you'd expect a somewhat, like, it's hard to call it a higher low, but like a higher low. Honestly, I'm not too, like, I just look at it and I'm just not too excited, just based on the fact that, like you said, the narrative is gone, the merge is through. It went perfectly, as far as I understand anyway, but we're in a bear market, right? And you need narratives to keep stuff up, and we don't have one for ETH anymore right now anyway. So for me, it's at support. It's both at weekly support, at daily support, but I want the narrative on top of it, right? I want either like extraordinary strength to take like a trade, or I want a narrative at support. Like if I don't get both, I'm just not going to. And for me, Eve's just doesn't have the narrative, so I'm not going to take the trade. But I think just based on the fact that the weekly and the daily for Eve hit support just makes me think that we're going to spend at least a couple of days here without breaking down. Anything beyond that, I have no idea about. For me, I took the trade at 1K, took it to 1.7, and exited, and that trade's done. I'm not going to think about it anymore. So like Eve's just like old news for me now.
Thank you.
Basically.
See you later. Did your job. Gave me the bear market bounce. See you in a few months type of thing. Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable. I think this is still very much a trader's market, and that some of the technical levels that are being reached are still good and worth kind of poking a stick at, as I've said before, on sort of lower time frames, intraday, etc. But as far as higher time frame, either swing or some other narratively, a lot of those things got deflated over the last couple of weeks, as we'll discuss with the news stuff as well. The trend is still down. The narratives, at least the crypto-specific ones that held up the market, are in the rearview mirror at this point. And all the macro stuff and the things that have actually been pushing around the markets don't seem to be giving us any rest either. Because that in itself could be a narrative, right? That like macro, no one gives a shit about macro anymore, or macro's like people are tired of it, or it doesn't matter as much, or it's better than it was before, some sort of pivot. Like that in itself could be a narrative boost for crypto, but it just hasn't been the case. The headlines have been relentless as far as that kind of stuff goes. And I think people also forget that sometimes price can create narratives. So, if it's something starts being like, if something's just trending down, a lot of the time stuff will break, or a lot of the metrics that are informed by price will also go down, and it sort of spirals to the downside, and you can get the same to the upside as well. So, as far as like the market's missing a narrative or extraordinary strength, like sometimes those two are related, right? Like you get some extraordinary strength and the narrative comes out of it, even if it wasn't the most obvious driver in the first place. But I agree, it's kind of not the case of either. And as I've said last week, and a lot of this is going to be sort of repeating last week's stuff, because the market just hasn't gone anywhere apart from down a little bit. But a lot of the time when it comes to like these narrative laden ideas, once the big obvious trade has played out, a lot of the time there's just nothing to do for a while. You just got to let the market sit, and there isn't going to be another opportunity like that just around the corner. In the bull market there is, because the flows are so asymmetric, kind of inflows versus outflows, and the amount of dispersion in the market, you can always find a narrative. And again, the price cycle reinforces that. But when liquidity is so scarce and it's very PvP and it's all of us trading against each other type of thing, like once there's this big thing to focus on, once that thing is gone, the likelihood that there's another one just like it around the corner is pretty damn low. Like once that trade is over, for the most part, you've kind of got to wait for something else. Maybe short-term trade the levels if you want, but as far as like big obvious market-wide catalysts, I don't think it's the type of environment to expect them back to back to back.
Yeah, I agree. I honestly, this is the stuff that I like about bear markets, is you have like one coin going at one time. So you can just like, you go into like one narrative, you play it, you get out, you get into the next one, because one coin is going to have one most of the time, right? You just have to pick right. And that's how it's been going for me anyway. Like I went from Sol, from Eve and Sol basically to Atom, out of Atom into XRP. And there's going to be one after XRP, right? And the cool thing is that you can play these and then you just leave, and you don't really have to pick, you don't have to have so many options where you're like, okay, fuck, I cannot be in all 10 of these coins because I think they're all going to go up. But you just have to pick one. Obviously, it makes it more difficult to make money in general, but it's kind of cool when you see the market just kind of doing poorly in general, but you keep on picking right, so you can kind of make money in a shitty market, and then obviously compounds when the market gets better again, right? So if you can make a little bit of money, like 20-30% on a coin here and there.
People can get so angry at that. A little bit of money, 20-30% here and there. Like, I understand why you say that. Like, there's been plenty of opportunities like that, but it just sounds funny.
Yeah, it does.
Like on its face. Like, can you imagine a S&P TradFi boomer listening to this? Like, the worst conditions ever. Just poke a stick at the market, 20-30% in and out. Like, oh my god, what kind of Ponzi scheme are you running?
Yeah, but that's the cool thing about crypto, right? You have these opportunities even during bear markets. Obviously, if you pick wrong, right, you're gonna lose a bunch of money. But I've been lucky so far. But the cool thing is, like, let's say you like double your stack during a bear market or something. That's going to be so much more impactful during the next bull market, right? Because that double turns into like a 3x, 4x, 5x, much easier. So yeah, I don't know. I
People
like
down
these
40,
conditions.
60, 80% listening to this, and Donald's like, just double your stack, it's fine. Then
I
oh
mean,
god, I'm here
I,
like singing the praises of people who like survived or are close to their peak all-time high type of thing with a small drawdown, and Don's you're like, oh, what's a casual double between friends in these conditions? I get what you're saying though; it's totally reasonable, and I think
yeah,
you and
and
I are kind of, because of our past, we sort of almost like the market conditions where there's less to focus on, because it used to be the case in crypto where you literally go on crypto Twitter, you could keep up with everything that happened in crypto in an hour, right, or in the same
yes.
day you could keep track of everything. Whereas now you've got like all the TradFi stuff, credit markets, DeFi, NFTs, like altcoins and all sorts of futures. It's impossible now. So I guess to some extent, this is kind of a return to tradition where, there are one or two coins that are really going to move. You know what they are. There's nothing special there. And they stand out like a sore thumb, given everything else is like red or weak. And as long as you trade those and do a decent job of being, I guess, cerebral and mercenary with your entries and exits, you don't have that sort of fatigue, decision fatigue when it comes to which coins do I long when everything is up, 30, 50%, and there are new listings every day and you can't keep up with the industry and so on and so forth. Let's talk about the setup. I mean, I say this with some irony because I know talking to you about setups a lot of the time is an exercise in futility, because it's kind of, I looked at it, I thought it would go up, and yada yada. I don't know why we do this, but I will entertain you
Yes.
on this point. I've got. Do you want me to look at XRP USD or BTC first for some semblance of
So
post-fact rationalization?
XRP BTC on the monthly.
Here we go. Yeah, we know all the big market participants are looking at this chart, deciding.
They are, man. They are. So if you go back all the way to the 1st September of 2016, right, that very obvious swing high. If you draw a level in there at 0.1451, so 1,450 sats, you can clearly see that that's been like an area of importance, right? So like there's a few touches on the as support and as resistance. And if we want, like, once we had that giga rally through it, I was like actually very interested in buying it the entire way. But I was like, this is leaning on it too much. And this is exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about the Bitcoin thing, where you're like, okay, it's leaning on it too much. Even if it wants to go up, it should kind of break it.
Yeah.
And XRP BTC did exactly that, right? So broke the level down and then immediately engulfed it. And with one impulse, right? And with these kind of moves, oftentimes you get like a small impulse through a level, and then it consolidates for a while, and then it has a much bigger impulse off of the level, right? And that's exactly what's happening. So I've been kind of looking at XRP a lot for the people that have been following my streams. Like, I've been talking about it. I've just been like, I don't know when to pull the trigger because I'm pretty sure it's going to go up. I just don't want to be sitting in it for too long, right? Because it's just kind of like...
Can you imagine the guy who bought like the first best test of this level, and like 6 months later he's like, oh, screw it, macro looks bad, I'm gonna sell.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't want to be that guy, right?
Because the retest was in December 21. That's when technically, at least on this chart, the retest took place, and then the engulf was the monthly candle of June of this year. But yeah, so you knew it was like in a monthly area of support in general, but it spent 6 months there. What was the actual trigger impetus? Was it on the USD pair, or was it some relative strength thing?
No, it was actually on the Bitcoin pair on the weekly time frame. So if you go back to the 9th of November, 2020, that level has been decently accurate, right?
Just put this podcast in a museum, man. Like,
it's just long time frame stuff. I love that. And basically, what happened was that the pump that we had, like the low on the 13th of June, got stopped around that level. These kind of like on the Bitcoin pair, like the liquidity isn't the best, and like.
Do you have a price level for that, by the way? Sorry, I'll just type it in.
For that box,
yeah,
I just have like 1637 and like 1694.
Okay, yeah, I got you.
So that's kind of like the resistance that I was looking at. So I was like, okay, we're on top of monthly support. We did that kind of fake out to the downside. So I want to be buying eventually. I just want to be buying with momentum, because otherwise I'll be sitting here for weeks and weeks, and who knows what the fuck Bitcoin's going to do in between. And then we just got the close through that level with an impulse on top of it. It didn't look random, looked like it was kind of like going somewhere, and I basically just bought into momentum. But basically I bought, like I had all of that, like the monthly Bitcoin setup, the weekly XRP Bitcoin setup, and then I looked on the USD pair, and we talked about this in the newsletter right before it went up. And I sent you messages. I sent you messages.
You did.
With
You're
like,
welcome.
okay.
I didn't buy. That's why it went up.
But yeah, I was basically talking like that looked like it wants to go up.
Also, surely that's, sorry to interrupt, that must be part of your trading system now. Like, if you show me a coin and I ignore you, you like double your size. And if I'm like, hey, yeah, that looks pretty good, I might poke at it, you just close all your positions and delete your messages and like put me on mute for a day. That's really what it feels like.
I mean, so far it's not that way, but I mean, I might have to.
Yeah, that's what the evidence is suggesting anyway. Where are you going to sell this thing? The USD pair, I mean, we sort of discussed again in the newsletter the tight range that it was in on the weekly and in the daily, and it's obviously broken out from that, right? I think it's clear as anything that I think the USD level that at least I had, or at least in the newsletter, it's something similar. It was just a range high at about 38.40 cents, right? If we're looking at very recent levels, and it broke out, it actually gave a nice retest, which is nice on the 22nd. Or 21st even, that red daily candle before the real sort of impulse kicked off. So that's a range breakout, and it's quite a long range, at least on the daily time frame. It goes back to June. It's starting to reach, at least on the USD pair, some of the underside levels now. You know, the pre-breakdown sort of 60 cents round number or thereabouts. Have you? When are you dunking this thing? Because we know you're not going to hold it to $589 or whatever.
Yeah, I don't. So in general, like I would like to hold this until the SEC news get hotter, because that's kind of the narrative that it has, and that's one of the other factors in me wanting to buy this thing and me actually looking at it for so long, is that if they win the trial, the SEC trial that they have, I think it's just going to gigamoon basically, and that's a narrative, right? That's just a bear market narrative. If that goes, a lot of people will buy it back in. I will sell into that pump if I get it. Now, we're kind of on a timer because I feel like Bitcoin and like in general, crypto wants to go lower, which makes this trade a little bit complicated. Because if Bitcoin was looking solid into like 21K, was just chilling, I would just hold this to $1, if not 2 or 3, like XRP.
Here we go. This is the classic Don, like Turbo Moon target. People get excited and it wicks like 10%. He's like, I sold everything. The market goes to zero. And people who aren't following his every tweet, like, retweet, reply, video, podcast, newsletter just get left in the dust. Because the last they heard, he was talking about $50 XRP and they sold it 2 hours later.
Well, I mean, if you're following my trades, you got to follow my content, I guess. But enough. No, I honestly
look, as a mental model, whenever you give me a target, I like take away 50 to 80%. That's when I know you'll be selling, like, in reality. Like, I mean, Solana 120 got dunked at 50. Do you know what I mean? Like,
okay, but that's on you. That one's on you. But yeah, no, for me, XRP, like the realistic target is
60, surely. Range high.
No, I think it's either here, either you sell 0.5. That's exactly where I have like resistance. It's the less obvious but more important resistance to me. It's coming from like the 12th of November 2018 levels, where like it acted like that was where it sold off. Then we had
sorry, bro, I haven't paid for the archaeology data feed to access those levels. My trading view only supports 2021.
Stop judging its weekly level. You can see how important it is when you draw it in, like a box or like a level around 50 cents, basically. Obviously, also makes sense just because it's a round number and a psychological number, right?
And 50 cents impact on US hip hop is also understated, so that definitely
there's
some compliments for you.
Oh god, but no, I think like this level, you either sell here, having made like a good whatever, like 20% on that trade. That's what I've been thinking about, like whether I want to sell here or not. obviously would have preferred selling at like 0.55 if I'm selling right now, but that's just how it goes sometimes.
Yeah.
Or if you don't sell here, I think you target 0.9. I think either or. Those are the realistic targets to me. Like 0.5, where we are right now, that was like the realistic target when I bought. I was like, okay, I can easily get to 0.5. The question is, can I get to 0.9? And I think if you get positive news on this SEC trial, you just don't want to be selling. You want to be selling into very high, or until the moment, like once the momentum dries up, which I don't think would happen anytime soon, because there's a bunch, like everyone, and this is like a fact, everyone knows XRP, right? You talk with people on the street, you talk with people that have been in crypto years and years ago, everyone knows XRP, right? It's like ETH, it's a little bit like Litecoin, but I think Litecoin isn't even as well known as XRP is.
I think that's fair, yeah.
And when you get a narrative like this, right? Basically, XRP is a meme coin in my eyes. And when you get the biggest narrative that you can get on a coin like that, and it actually plays out, you don't want to be selling. You want to be keeping it. I think that could lead to quite the explosive pump. You obviously want to sell into that pump, but I'm not going to do it into like a 2x, because I think at that point, you're targeting a 2x, like from a 2x to like a 4 or 5x from the lows. And it's a 2x from the lows right now, 0.3 to 0.5, or almost. And I think from here, if the news are good, it can easily double or triple.
Sell now or sell never. That's the
basically
headline.
Right. Yeah.
I'm guessing invalidation is just either crypto like nukes and goes to zero, right, and drags this down with it, or some sort of like just pretty much loss of momentum back inside the range, yada yada. Anywhere near your entry, you're probably fucked, right, on a momentum trade like this.
Yeah. So in general, like the only discussion I have with myself in my head is, do I want to sell this? Like, I'm looking at Bitcoin, I'm looking at ETH. And the moment I see that they're gonna, like, where I get like a high likelihood of them breaking down, I'm probably gonna sell my XRP, and I'm probably gonna buy it back at like 0.4 if I get to. I think that'd be like a quick, swift nuke on Bitcoin and ETH could make that happen. But I want to be back in that trade because I think it's gonna go up afterwards regardless. So like XRP is the thing to trade in the next few days to weeks to months, I think. It's just a question of like, I'm going to trade basically my Bitcoin and ETH like thesis on XRP, just more bullish.
You've got some sort of villain arc going on where originally you were a good boy and you were trading your BTC thesis based on the SPX, and then the fact that it underperformed so badly has turned you into a villain where you're trading your BTC thesis with XRP. What's next? You're like, Dogecoin smart, Binance Smart Chain trading your like Cardano thesis or some crazy derivative at that point. It's only going downhill. You're like slowly descending into madness. Like you were bullish BTC, that's fine. You're bullish ETH, like okay, that's fine. Then you get really bullish Sol, fine. Now it's XRP. You're gonna turn into some, I don't know, Cardano DeFi influencer.
No, I think Cardano is like a step too far. I don't. Oh, and people are gonna hate me for this because there's a million fans, but there's like some things that I don't touch. For some reasons, Cardano is one of them. Just the fans and the people heading it rub me the wrong way.
Well, thank you for nuking our comment section.
Sorry about that.
That's fine. I mean, look, all my memes aside, that's a good trade. I mean, you've got the momentum on your side. You've got the comfort of a decent entry. And yeah, Godspeed. Let's see where this thing goes. At least the levels are clear,
Yes.
And the round numbers are really nice. These sort of 10-cent increments and everything. And this is a move that doesn't even have sort of clear headline speculation yet. As far as the litigation, it's not like we've heard like little leaks or anything else. It's pretty much been complete speculation. So if you get some actual good news or I don't know, rumors of a settlement or whatever it may be, yeah, you're in good territory. But I think presumably this is just like anything else, right? Like it's the kind of mercenary trade. You're in for the narrative, in for the momentum. If one of those goes, you're out basically. This isn't.
Yeah.
This is kind of like the ETH trade to some extent.
Yeah, I mean, I don't honestly, I don't really give a shit about XRP. I don't really give a shit about ETH either. Like, I mean, I'm going to be an ETH maxi when like the charts look good and then the charts look shit and I'm not going to be anymore. It's the same with XRP. I dislike XRP more than I like more than I dislike ETH. I actually like ETH. I generally dislike XRP, but I don't really give a shit, right? If I can make money with this thing, and then sell it to someone else that kind of like rushes into the trade after the
To buy
news,
the
I
news,
mean,
yeah.
so be it, right?
Good stuff. We can take, speaking of news, well, I think we can summarize, right? Like BTC is stuck where it is. It needs to get away from this range low / from 20k, because the more it tests it, the less attractive it is of a buy, and the higher the likelihood of a failed breakdown. Or just of a breakdown. A failed breakdown would actually be good, but it would need to be really obvious on the weekly time frame. Just like it needs to nuke the range and then sort of nuke back in and be something that stands out. Otherwise, you kind of have to take it at face value that if this breaks, it's going to go towards like much lower levels, basically.
Yes.
So it needs to get the hell out. And the doomer low volatility kind of scenario is the market ranging between basically 18 and 22 for a long time, and that would just be miserable for everyone involved, I think. So in any case, stuck here, that's bad, needs to get away in order not to be like 6k. If it breaks down, the reclaim would be good. If it reclaims kind of 21 and maybe even just makes a higher high and establishes a 25 to 35 trading range, etc., that would be good. If things keep going how they're going, this doesn't look like a macro bottom, and we might have to go fishing at lower prices if the weekly range finally gives. As far as ETH goes, merge over, that's in the periphery. That's visible in ETH USD and ETH BTC. It looks like it was a sell the news event. Merge is still bullish for like next cycle fundamentals, so to speak, because it kind of sells itself well as a low energy, pro ESG proof of stake is so technologically advanced, and the team is so good for being able to merge with everything live and not break anything, so on and so forth. But in the short term, it's kind of still your NASDAQ basket for the most part, and one that doesn't have its narrative anymore. As far as technical levels go, 1200 is a nice high time frame retest level that should give some sort of bounce, but in general, still kind of stuck at previous cycles, 1400-ish area, and I guess we have to wait for some price action to develop based on that breakout level to see what comes next. But again, not rushing into it, because technical levels aside, it had its trade, had its moment in the sun, had its narrative. That's over now. You got to let the market digest that a little bit, and it's going to be short-term trading sort of paradise in the interim. As far as the SPX goes, we're back at monthly support, but it looks not great, because this is the type of monthly level that generally lends itself well to one bounce, maybe 1.5, not like some amazing reversal structure, but it's still at support in this kind of 3,600-ish area on the monthly. As far as the weekly and daily go, those just look like shit, so not much else to say. The monthly really has to rescue this thing and put in some sort of range low. On the weekly, if you wanted to see what that looks like, you would have to hold at around 37 to 3600-ish. Basically, the lows have to hold in order for the monthly thesis to be valid. So kind of keep an eye out on that. And I think if SPX breaks and continues kind of downtrend continuation, crypto would need to show a lot of relative strength to absorb all that kind of correlated selling. And I'm not sure that's terribly likely, but what do I know? We can certainly, if it's going to happen anywhere, it either happens at 20k or it doesn't happen at all, and we all die, right? So worth paying attention to. Everything else in altcoin land, really kind of flat for the most part as far as watch lists go. XRP is showing relative strength. The market's piling into it after Don, no surprise there, and it's kind of a news speculative SEC momentum type of trade, which he will dump on you the second anything starts to look fishy. So treat that with caution. Fair summary. Should we jump into some headlines?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. Coinbase tested an internal crypto trading desk last year. I don't know about you, Don. Like, after the BitMEX days, whenever I hear internal trading desk, I just get this PTSD and chills down my spine, and I start shivering, get into the fetal position, and start crying. That's not a term. It's a completely normal industry term, but I think the way we were taught it was unusually cruel and rough. The connotations I have with this aren't great, but it also doesn't say if they ever made any money. Wait, hold on. It says this unit completed 100 million from which it profited. I guess they made money, but they closed it down anyways. It looks like it was some kind of test. The quick take crypto exchange giant Coinbase started setting up an internal trading desk last year. They reportedly abandoned the idea after a $100 million trial as senior traders hired to run the unit left the company. That's why they left. This is, I guess, been updated slightly from the last time I read it. Coinbase is a massive treasury, right? They have just a lot of money. They have a lot of revenue, even though it's very cyclical, etc. They've certainly got a bunch of coins and a bunch of dollars and just a large amount of cash in general. So it's not entirely surprising that they might want to deploy some of that, or see how that can be used even in these conditions to kind of protect themselves from the cyclical nature of crypto, or just make some money. Looks like there was a blog post reacting to the article from Coinbase, and the main bits were saying Coinbase does not and has never had a proprietary trading business. Any insinuation that we misled Congress is a willful misrepresentation of the facts. They don't have a proprietary trading business or act as a market maker. Coinbase does, from time to time, purchase cryptocurrency as principal, including for our corporate treasury and operational purposes. We do not view this as proprietary trading because its purpose is not for Coinbase to benefit from short-term increases in value. That's a bit of just a lazy time frame distinction, it feels like.
It is, yeah.
That's a bit of a cop-out, but whatever. So there was a desk, and now there's no desk. I don't know. I'd like to see what kind of trades they were trying to put on. I think in general, it's you should expect, and I know there's all sort of regulatory compliance stuff around this, but it shouldn't be terribly surprising that crypto companies with like hundreds of millions, billions, and so on in crypto are going to do stuff with that money to both just protect their business or for their treasury or whatever it may be. I just think the issues only arise when there's like blatant predatory kind of behavior, like was alleged with BitMEX with its internal trading desk, where it wasn't just market making, providing liquidity. It just seemed very predatory is probably the word I'd go back to in that regard. There were also very reasonable and to this day persistent concerns about the sort of FTX Alameda relationship, right? Given those two were, Alameda was the bootstrapping for FTX as an exchange, right? And so people were concerned that, given Sam was in charge of both, basically, that, are there sufficient sort of corporate veils around this and protections for users and et cetera, et cetera. So I think the crypto industry generally has a bit of a blotty history when it comes to big exchanges and their trading / market making operations. But given just how much crypto they hold, this can't be the most surprising thing in the world. I'd love to see what some of their strategies were, though. Was it just find out what we're going to list and insider trade them, like some of our employees have been kind of accused of doing? Allegedly in Minecraft. Sentenced. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's allegedly. If I think they got one of them got sentenced, right?
Did, yeah.
So that it's allegedly true as far as the jury thought or whatever. Whatever. Fuck it. You get my point, right? Like the industry sucks at this.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always skeptical with this kind of stuff. But then again, like I'm not the biggest Coinbase fan. I think the way they run the business has been atrocious. The fact that they're losing market share to everyone is just embarrassing. And it's because of certain business directions that they're going in, I think. But yeah, I mean, whenever you have these big exchanges, you're going to have something like that, I think. It just makes sense, right? If you're holding that much crypto, you kind of have to do something with it.
I mean, Saylor holds a lot of crypto. His strategy seems rather one-dimensional as far as...
Yeah, but then again, he holds Bitcoin. And I'm sure he's actually not enjoying it too much right now.
Yeah. His average is 30K. Isn't that crazy?
Is it?
Yeah. His average is 30K. His average is like the best resistance ever, basically.
I'm gonna sell 30K if it gets there. Just, I mean, in general, holy shit, 30K is quite bad looking at it. It's like if you drop a little bit more, that's a 2x away. It's like that's like the big rally that we're talking about, right? Like if we're rallying big time, we're going to 30K. That's his entry.
I know, isn't that mad? That's what kind of bad trade sort of, like bad trade management and size management gets you. Because if you think about his current position, he's down whatever percent from 13 to 18 on a position that he can't even start to sell, right?
No,
that's kind of the worst thing about it.
10K.
He's trapped. Like, I guess it doesn't matter. Like, people speculating, oh, his entry is so bad, his average is so bad, etc. Well, I agree with you, but also, like, it almost doesn't matter because he can't do anything about it anyway. He can't sell. He's trapped. If he sells, the entire market goes to zero. It's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? Yeah. Only thing he can do is buy and basically hope that he gets bailed out to some extent, and then he can do some Bitcoin yield product or lend it out, or maybe sell some MicroStrategy shares, or do something to quote unquote take profit, but realistically, as far as just like outright selling BTC, that's not on the cards for him, certainly not at these prices.
Yeah, the thing is, he cannot even buy anymore, as far as I'm aware, because he's been trying to raise and he's not getting filled, basically. So he's been trying to raise more money. I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure, like, I read this like a week ago or 2
Didn't he
weeks
buy
ago.
like 60 BTC recently or something?
Yeah, exactly. he wanted to buy much more, but he couldn't because no one would basically give him money for it.
Oh yeah, he was trying to auction MicroStrategy shares or something, right? To raise
Yes.
money to buy more Bitcoin. People were like, okay, Brev,
They're
hold
like,
up,
no.
hold the phone.
And that is like, so he cannot buy, he cannot sell. He's just stuck, and he's majorly underwater.
And he's being
And
investigated.
yep. And I mean, the
What a
thing is,
good
like,
life.
whenever I buy a big position in a small thing, right? And this is like what it is essentially for him, right? Because he has so much money that Bitcoin is a small thing. So whenever I buy like a shit coin with a big position, you're gonna push the price up by yourself, right? Like when
Yes.
the coin's small enough, you're gonna push the price up. And then what you always like when it trades, what I always have in my mind is like, okay, where does it end up when I sell, right? Because it can trade up 2x from my entry, but if I sell, it still could be a loss, right? Because I'm
Yes.
just too big to get out. And I mean, when he's looking at it right now, he's already underwater. It must be so fucking stressful. I hate it when I'm in illiquid positions like that. I'm 100% certain he's not enjoying it either. But he has to kind of play the part, right? Because if he doesn't, and other people
That's
start
what he
selling
signed
as
up
well,
for.
it gets bad. Like it gets worse and worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if he sells, yeah. It is, it goes back to that, really.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a madness, to be honest, and it's just mad because, especially because he was the one, like the Sailor MicroStrategy Infinite US hours bid was what ignited to a large extent the bull market in the first place,
Yeah.
right? And he was kind of his trading around it was amazing because he would basically win every day, every week, just win, buy more, prices up more, up more until it stopped working. And to go from like an amazing entry bull market sort of beacon to hugely underwater, can't sell, can't buy more, investigated, can't do shit. It's actually a very crypto story, to be honest with you, right? I remember even memeing tweets when he was using kind of his Bitcoin as collateral, kind of lending it out and then using the proceeds, the yields to buy more Bitcoin. I was like, oh well, when I did that on BitMEX, I was an idiot, but he does it with his company, and he's a genius. But it's nice to see that the outcome is essentially the same, right? The convexity there gets to you. So that's kind of a bit of a tangent, but yeah, I would love more transparency about what basically crypto exchanges do around their treasury management and their internal market making systems, if any, and all that type of stuff. I just know we're not going to get it. So what's the point, really? Azuki, more NFT stuff, Don, because you and I love NFT stuff.
I always
Azuki
lose money on
creator.
it.
It's okay. Your investments are with good pictures, with vibrant communities. They will come back. The Azuki creator closes in on 30 million fundraise, according to sources. This is obviously things you hear at the bottom, right? Like profile pictures, whatever. I'm not going to go there. and so basically, the Chiru Labs, the creator of the Azuki NFT collection, closing in on 30 million Series A raise. And that's just a week after the fellow NFT project Doodles bagged 54 million from VCs. Now, funnily enough, the sort of middle paragraph here says neither Chiru nor the project's pseudonymous founder Zagabond responded to requests for comment. Now, if you'll remember, there was a controversy involving Zagabond because when he kind of doxed or unveiled or some part, he was threatened with a part of his past becoming public. It became public information that he had, let's call it, allegedly rugged or not been the founder he should have been in previous NFT collections. And if I recall correctly, that includes some of them where he had different personalities and completely different characters and different names. I think at one point he either hired someone pretending to be a woman or pretended to be a female NFT influencer himself, despite being male. So basically, look, colloquially, allegedly in Minecraft, like a serial rugger type of behavior, right?
Yes.
And it's just very, very crypto, as you and I have discussed ad nauseam, to see these people who scam and act in bad faith, allegedly, fail upwards. Because that's what happens, right? Like, you don't get punished, you don't get ostracized, you don't get cast out. Once you hit this certain, I think it's, I don't know, some sort of critical velocity, it seems like, or critical mass with the attention you generate, no matter how dodgy it may be, to use generous language, it just seems like you can only fail upwards, and this space is just incapable of self-policing. So to me, it's mad that someone, one of the founders of this project, and still associated with it to this day, can essentially allegedly have this history of being a bad faith actor across several NFT projects, several personalities, and hey ho, that project, it doesn't get ostracized or castigated. Instead, they're just going to raise tens of millions because I guess the art is good. And also, what is it with these NFT projects raising like tens of millions, man? Like, if it says 54 million for Doodles, 50 million for Moonbirds. I mean, Bored Apes, I understand, but 450 million raised there, but they're actually trying to build some sort of metaverse stuff. A lot of these others are just pictures. This is, I don't know, this whole thing's mad to me, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, honestly, like with the NFT side of things, I always I buy, and then like I either buy NFTs and NFTs go up but ETH go down, or buy buy NFTs and ETH goes up and NFTs go down. So every time I buy it, they come out at zero. It's like it's so stupid. So I'm not the expert to ask, but this is wild to me. Yeah, every time, and like you said, every time someone scams or like does something shady, allegedly anyway.
It's like, how do we give you more money, please?
Yeah, they just get money thrown at them. It's kind of nuts, but I guess it is what it is. It's just how the market goes.
It is what it is.
You can do nothing about it. And for some reason, like projects like that stick around. So it's just something to accept, I guess. I don't think that's gonna stay forever like this. Like the market isn't gonna stay forever like this. But I mean, the fact that the market is like this just also leads to good volatility, right? Obviously, liquidity in NFT is pretty hard to get. So if you want to sell, buy, whatever, trade
As
it.
you've discovered.
It's a nightmare. But in general, in crypto, the fact that we have these kind of things with Luna and with a bunch of other things just generates a lot of volatility, which is really nice for a trader. So I'm not going to complain too much, but it is just completely and utterly insane to me.
We just don't have a moral compass either, which is great. I mean, when I say which is great, I do mean which is great. Because again, the scope for Ponzi speculation and the amount of greed becomes infinite. But after a certain point, it does become tiring seeing like blatantly negative sum, bad faith actors have like Stockholm syndrome supporters around them.
Yeah,
That's
it
kind
is
of
frustrating.
It's just weird and cultish and not very entertaining, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I do hate it from like a personal point of view.
Yes.
It's basically like from a professional point of view, I don't mind it because I can trade around it. From a personal point of view, as in my personal opinion, I fucking hate it and makes me jaded about crypto in general. Every time like I read stuff like this where I'm like, okay, this is what we are basically.
Yeah.
We just throw money at scammers, or alleged scammers anyway, and we put them on a pedestal, and it's just the same as in the traditional world, right? Where people just pay money and get away with it, or don't even pay money and get away with it. And it's very, very like it's sad to see. It's just as like a trader, I can take advantage of it, which
you can express your views in the order books.
Exactly, and there's two different sides to it. But yeah, it's frustrating. It's very much frustrating.
It's also very crypto.
Yep.
FTX, more FTX news. We've already dunked on them for the dodgy Alameda relationship, allegedly, in the early days. And we've got another news article. FTX wants to raise up to $1 billion at its $32 billion valuation. I wonder if we're going to get more CZ subtweets. Have you seen, like, whenever FTX is in, like, the headlines, CZ just starts, like, firing off, going full schizo. It's very entertaining, actually. And he's like, oh, real companies focus on building instead of raising money, that type of shit. Like, it's great. And then Sam sort of fires back a little bit. They need to get into it. Just go to Dubai and fight, guys. What are we doing here?
Oh, I would love it.
I'd love that. Yeah.
I mean, I would see it more often if CZ didn't block me years ago.
Yeah. That's a good one. That's a good story. I remember that. It's funny because Binance still reaches out to talk about stuff, but whatever.
Yeah.
I guess that's a real decentralized company, right? Like the CEO has you blocked for years, and other people want to do shit with you. Anyway.
Yeah.
They want to raise $1 billion. The funding would go to additional deal makings, like acquisitions and stuff. I guess maybe Tom Brady needs some more adverts.
Mm-hmm.
In any case, since the onset of crypto winter, FTX has been on a buying spree, purchasing best assets and making deals with struggling firms, etc. So presumably it's just to make more deals and buy what they see as as cheap and distressed companies, as well as for like expansionary stuff and so on and so forth. I think, as far as, I mean, fine, raising money in a bear market's fine. I think keeping that valuation for FTX specifically is like probably fine as well. It just seems like as far as products go, it just felt like it hit a point of diminishing returns. I don't know if you share this view, where at one point, the fact that they were listing pretty much everything traders wanted immediately, when there was when speculation was like a global frenzy, that was a huge competitive advantage, right? Like the fact that they were so quick to the market with like new coins, new listings and futures and other stuff. It was really good and it got a lot of people trading there. But after a certain point, especially when the speculation frenzy like started to die down, it sort of seemed like the listings were chasing their own tails. And like, lumber would go up a lot for like 1 week and it'd be all over crypto Twitter and they'd like list it, but at that point, like it's down only and no one cares, right?
Yeah.
And I think also people started having negative connotations with FTX listings around the time that the Solana summer, lol, but like Solana DeFi basically happened. We'd have these insane projects with absolutely absurd FDVs and all that usual suspects, if you will, funding it, and the perps get listed, they maybe pump for a bit and then go down only and the funds are still in profit. Like that whole fiasco left a really bad taste for both Solana DeFi and just FTX listings in general, which is understandable. And then I think also the fact that a lot of these legacy type market listings happen so quickly and trying to capture this whole like GME, AMC, etc. type of flow. If you look at the both on FTX US and FTX International, if you look at the volumes that the stocks trade on there, it's not a lot. It's a bit of a ghost town when it comes to stock trading on these places. And I think it's a function of being late to that trend in general, and also probably just overestimating how many people would move, both how many crypto native people would trade stocks, but also how many stocks native people would want like a venue to do it all at once and trade crypto and stocks. So that a lot of those products and stocks, etc., and that offering is like a bit of a ghost town. Now it's good to have it, I think, as an option for maybe future cycle, future speculation, etc. But at the moment, it just basically shifted the balance from a very kind of proactive venue that was super responsive to traders and listings, etc., to a bit of a kind of bloated number of listings and offerings, especially when the demand wasn't there to keep up. I don't know what you think of any of that.
Pretty much exactly what you just said. I mean, I honestly, I think they know. I think they're just basically preparing it. So when the market's gonna come back, they have it. So that's like not the dumbest thing in the world, because if you kind of they did last bull market, it kind of works, right? You add stuff as it comes, but it's gonna be like all over the place basically, and it's so much easier to prepare for like a new bull market or new interest by doing it early. I honestly don't really see the next bull market or like a new trading frenzy anytime soon, honestly. So like that's might be a little bit mistimed, but I could be completely wrong on my assessment as well. But for me, I think the trading hype has topped. I think it's like Bitcoin in 2017.
Yeah.
I don't think even close to the numbers that we had globally, like on GME, on AMC, and all that kind of stuff. I think that's toppy behavior, right? As like a trading as a profession or trading as like a hobby thing. I think that was basically the top.
Yeah.
And that might be like investing in too much of that, I think might be a mistake. But I think
have
people,
it, right?
Yeah, and I think the FTX people probably are smarter than me. And
that's a safe bet.
Yeah, and fuck you. But they're probably gonna like read the market better than I will. So yeah, I could be wrong enough.
Do you remember? It just reminds me of some interesting shit. Like, do you remember when we were discussing at much higher prices how, hey, it's kind of a bad sign how all these crypto exchanges who have all the flows and all this information are all like hiring freezers, or freezing hiring and just like nuking their staff and doing all this type of stuff. And that was a very good signal that was ignored. And I get why it was ignored, because a lot of the time the layoffs also come at the bottom. But at that point, it was just when macro was starting to turn, and it was just this kind of consensus layoffs among big centralized venues for the most part. That was ended up being a pretty good signal. And also, as far as like speculation as a job and kind of trying to reach normies, I find it shocking how pretty much every single big centralized exchange failed at getting any NFT market share. Isn't that crazy? Like NFTs, the NFT bubble and the hype and the amount of volume that was traded at its peak and the amount of people it brought into crypto and the onboarding that it effect that it had, etc., was so insane. And pretty much every single big centralized exchange completely fumbled the bag on it. That is very rare and very impressive.
Yeah, completely crazy to me as well, but it is what it is, I guess.
It is what it is. So yeah, we'll see how this race goes. I would be surprised if they don't fill it out completely. They probably will. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on these new acquisitions and find ways to talk constructively about them. Let's put it that way. The final bit of news is U.S. Federal Reserve hikes interest rates by 75 basis points. So, you know, that was in line with expectations. And as we wrote in the newsletter, like, in line with expectations is good, quote unquote, because there's no bearish surprise. But it's not good because there's nothing bullish about a large, like, a heavy-handed increase in interest rates, right? Now, as it says here, maybe a more dovish Fed would be an example of a catalyst. We talked about that, like the idea of inflation peaking, some sort of pivot, and the data reflecting that. But that doesn't seem to be the case at the moment. I think, honestly, I think we'll see peak inflation this year. I might be mad, or like early next year at the most, like sort of once the winter season gets through and all that type of stuff. But I think we're closer to the inflation peak. You know, I think there's a lot of people are pricing in some sort of like exponential relationship there, or that this is like the start of a larger stagflation-y type of trend. Maybe. I'm not entirely sure. I wouldn't be surprised to see, on average, inflation stay high, but for this kind of next quarter or two to put in some sort of relative peak. Again, I know nothing about this, but sort of anecdotally, that's where my brain is. But yeah, I guess it sort of just it reiterates what we discussed last week, where crypto catalysts are like mostly gone, especially around the majors, and the macro catalysts aren't positive and are actually more or less the same as they were, kind of heavy. And looking at the S&P tells you all you need to know about that, which is kind of also funny because it's sort of the last bit of not news but picture or tweet that I've got from Walter Bloomberg, which is that Goldman Sachs cuts the S&P 500 year-end 2022 target to 3,600 from 4,300. That's pretty funny. That's like a paid group type of thing, right? It's like when the market's going up, your targets are higher. When it's going down, your targets are lower, and you kind of just like momentum chase like a monkey type of thing. But yeah, broader picture, macro and stuff, I don't know, sort of looks, and September, at least September seasonality is coming to an end, which is historically bad for crypto. But in general, with like end of year lull and then winter fuel crisis speculation and no clear crypto narratives kind of obvious, maybe crypto winter in the winter will be a bit shitty. I don't know what you think about any of this big picture stuff. I'm just kind of struggling narratively and macro-wise to be super optimistic for the time being.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general we're gonna decorrelate at some point, but it doesn't really make much sense to expect it. And as long as the S&P and all the traditional markets kind of look as shit as they do, there's no real reason to get too aggressive unless you have, I mean, like I said, a narrative or like momentum or anything like that. And that's just for like the traders amongst us, right? It's not really for the investors. If I was buying like long term, I think anything below 20K does look cool. But I mean, if I can get 15, 14K for Bitcoin, I'd much rather have that than 20K. So yeah, I'm not too excited about like the longer, like the macro situation, because honestly, to me, like just what I said with like this trading frenzy coming to an end, it just makes sense to have like a couple of years of like bleedy market where people just get washed out, right? Because everyone that I know got into trading one way or the other. Like it's either you trade the S&P or the Nasdaq or like in general, like the traditional markets, or you trade crypto. There's almost no one unaffected by the trading frenzy. And until that kind of like, until people just stop that a little bit, I think it makes sense to assume that we're not going to have the best kind of price action. And that's obviously going to go over into crypto as well. That said, crypto is so small that we can have big rallies and big drops.
We don't need you to suffer on our own, basically.
Yes, exactly. But I mean, we can trade up. I think when the S&P is going down, it's not there yet.
Yeah.
And I don't know when it's going to come, because I think it's stupid to kind of speculate on it. You're gonna see it once it happens, and you
Yes.
don't want to counter trade it anymore. And then you don't want to like trade the correlation between the S&P and Bitcoin, or like crypto as a whole, anymore. But before it does happen, like assuming it will happen, has led to people losing
And people have been literally front running the decoupling for like the whole year and getting smoked, right?
exactly.
Not going to
So
name names, but you and I know in the back of our head, like a lot of the
yes,
decoupling experts, so to speak. I think you're right. And you can also just carve out conditions under which that type of behavior is more likely. Like lower market cap, low liquidity type of conditions lend themselves better to those types of moves. But yeah, like if it's been lockstep for a year, that's a pretty strong trend. That's worth paying attention to. And your evidentiary threshold for that should be higher as well. It shouldn't be one candle or one day or 1 week or like a 5% discrepancy. Like something needs to break for you to notice and be like, oh, okay. Like, BTC up 20% while ES is limit down, something like
yes.
that. And you'd be like, oh, okay, this is different. And if you know, you know. And if you don't, it's probably not there. But yeah, I think to summarize, in the short term, trend is down. Stuff looks heavy. There are good levels to trade and enough narratives in the market for kind of short-term mercenary PvP type of behavior. If you want to trade, it's not a bad idea to get a higher time frame directional bias from high time frame support on risk indices and BTC and ETH, and then either trade those like a day trader pretty much, or if you see an altcoin showing relative strength, red, green among the red, or has some sort of narrative, just punt that when you think the majors are going to give you a bit of a breather. Easy in, easy out, and I guess wait for rosier times, Fed pivot, narrative, something to shift, because at the moment we're still sort of drifty, and don't fade the drift, I think, is we've learned on both sides of the trend.
Yep.
That's all from us, I think. Quite a long episode, but hopefully enough for you to chew on this fine Friday. Thank you again to FTX for supporting the show, despite all the shit that we talk and all of our criticisms and speculations, especially for your mobile trading app experience. Go get it, track your portfolio, trade stablecoins and altcoins and all sorts of tokens on there without getting liquidated. Support them because they support us somehow, despite our musings. And we will see you on Monday for Monday Markets, Tuesday newsletter, trletter.com, see what other altcoins Don pulls out of his bag. I mean, we pull out because I clearly contribute to that section as well. Haha, wink, wink. But that's all from us. I'm going to shut up. Don, thank you. Have a nice weekend, and we'll see you next week.
See you. Bye bye.